Great. So welcome to Green Drinks. We are excited to welcome you to our final monthly presentation of 2023. And this is marking BEAT's 20th anniversary, 20 years of doing work on behalf of wildlife and the environment that we all share. My name is Brittany Ebling. I'm the newest addition to the BEAT team. I joined in August as the deputy director. And tonight we'll all be sharing some of what BEAT has done historically, what we're working on now as a group, and what we anticipate doing into the next year and beyond. We can move to the next slide. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to check out our website, beatnews.org, for more information about upcoming Green Drinks events, volunteer opportunities. Jane, you can go to the next slide. Here you can see where you can find all kinds of information about public notices, about environmentally relevant issues happening in your town and throughout the state of Massachusetts, and for archives of our newsletter, which my coworker Chelsea produces bi-weekly and is really a rich treasure trove of information about all things happening in the Berkshires, statewide and beyond, about environmental issues here that affect our community, with ways to get involved. Next slide, please. And we also ask that if you appreciate the work that BEAT has done on behalf of wildlife and the environment we all share, that you support us at this critical end of year moment with a donation. As you will hear what everyone has to share about BEAT's past and present work, these campaigns have really lasting impacts on environmental justice campaigns for all beings in our community, and we hope to have 20 years more and much beyond that. Next slide. We also hope that you'll join us in January for the next Green Drinks event, in which we will discuss second chance composting in a hybrid format, so you can join us in person or online. And with that, I will pass the mic to Jane as we all introduce ourselves.
Great. So we're going to start off just with a quick introduction. I'm Jane Wynn, the executive director of BEAT and also one of the founders.
And you've heard from Brittany, so I assume we're going down the list. I'm Rose Wessel. I'm the program director for No Frack Gas in Mass.
I'm Chelsea Simmons, BEAT's programs director.
And I'm John Przenski, a project assistant for No Frack Gas in Mass, and sometimes for BEAT also.
I'm Lucas Duval, and I'm managing the air quality monitoring project, Breathe Easy Berkshires.
And I'm Andrew Ferrara, and I run the Berkshire Zero Waste Initiative.
All right, so I'm going to start us off here. Real quick, so I started working for BEAT in late October of 2021. At first to help with water quality sampling that BEAT was contracted to test by the city of Pittsfield. However, very soon after I began that work, I was asked to join the team full-time as the education and outreach coordinator. And a lot of my work involves just organizing educational events and programs, coordinating with volunteers and other organizations, and leading a lot of our stewardship work. So I'm going to go over some of the annual programs BEAT offers, as well as some new ones we introduced in 2023 that we hope to do again next year. And then I'll briefly touch on our volunteer opportunities and how people can get involved in some of the environmental stewardship work BEAT does. Most of the programs, events, and educational materials BEAT offers and organizes are entirely free and open to everyone. Our goal is to make them as accessible as possible and to help build and support a community of environmentally minded people, bring awareness to environmental issues and resources, and get people curious about and invested in the natural world. And none of that would be possible if not for the grants and generous donations BEAT receives, but especially the individuals who support BEAT by leading workshops, walks, and giving presentations free of charge so that more people can enjoy them and learn. In January of this year, we organized a wildlife tracking talk and 2 half-day workshops with Dan Gardoki, a skilled naturalist, educator, and tracker from Maine. On the day of the presentation, the Northeast got a fairly large snowstorm, which made it pretty difficult for many to get to the Berkshire Community College, which is where the presentation was taking place. But the snow actually made really great conditions for the tracking workshops the following day. And then this spring, Tom Tyning, a professor at BCC and just a phenomenal educator and herpetologist, whom I'm sure many of you know, led a full-day vernal pool workshop for BEAT with about 20 participants. He went over all the factors and just organisms that must be present for alintic water to be considered a vernal pool. And then we also went over how people can use the knowledge they gained from this workshop to go out on their own and certify vernal pools with the state, which is actually how they legally get protected. Yeah. And then this was our 5th year offering the Kids in Kayaks program at the annual Westside Block Party, which takes place at the Riverway Park in Pittsfield. This year, with the help of volunteers from the community and also other organizations, we were able to offer this to 24 families. And then we held the 14th Berkshire Biodiversity Day, also known as BioBlitz, on September 23rd and 24th. For those of you who might not know, a BioBlitz is just a 24-hour biological survey where scientists, naturalists, and community members try to identify as many living organisms as possible in a specific designated area. And this year it took place in South Egremont at the Green Acres properties, April Hill and Bow Wow Woods. The surveying was actually done at Bow Wow, and then we were very fortunate to be able to kind of use April Hill as a home base, especially because it was a very, very soggy weekend. It rained almost the entire time. But the scientists who joined us were able to camp in platform tents on the property. And then we had 4 specialists give presentations in this big barn at April Hill. And we were even able to host a dinner with specialists and volunteers. We had about 65 people who joined us over the weekend, including 17 specialists, and also student groups from 4 Berkshire County schools. And we identified over 300 species. And then there were a few outreach and education programs this year that we haven't tried in previous years. And one of those was expanding our monthly Pittsfield Green Drinks, turning it to Berkshire Green Drinks, by making it hybrid and then changing the in-person location each month to different areas of Berkshire County. This new format has given us more flexibility for locations and venues, and then also more importantly, it's made these free educational events much more accessible to folks. And we also record all of these Green Drinks presentations, and you can find those on BEAT's YouTube channel, along with lots of trail cam footage of local wildlife that people have captured in the Berkshires and some others as well. This year, we also organized 2 events in coordination with National Moth Week, which is the last week of July, as a way to bring awareness to the importance of these often overlooked insects. We welcomed back conservation photographer Carla Rhodes, who has made a huge impact in moth conservation awareness through her photography and publications in just world-renowned news organizations. And Carly gave a presentation on moths and how people can successfully and easily observe them on their own. And then we also offered a light sheet and mothing demo led by Matthew Rimkowicz, a local moth enthusiast and an amateur entomologist. And then we designed a new t-shirt illustrating the rosy maple moth as a way to get people excited about them. So if you've ever been to Beats Environmental Leadership and Education Center in Pittsfield, you've probably noticed our rain garden, especially if you've been there during the growing season. It's incredibly robust and very dense with native plants, and it also has some of the tallest blue vervain and Joe Pye weed I've ever seen. The vervain gets to be over 9 feet tall, and the Joe Pye weed is nearly at that height as well. So this year we decided to thin out our garden and give away lots of native plants to our supporters and some folks from the community. And it was a huge success. Lots of people came out, even though it was pouring rain the entire day. And still the garden was incredibly dense. Jade, if you click once more, yeah, you can see like that was still, I'm in there, so I'm 5'7", and that's some of the Joe Pye weed just like towering over me. So we definitely plan on doing that again next spring. So now I'm going to quickly go through some of the recurring volunteer opportunities that BEAT offers annually and even weekly, like this one, cutting and pulling invasive hardy kiwi vines in Burbank Park. BEAT began these efforts nearly 10 years ago, and we do it every Friday morning, basically at 10 a.m. And although it's a lot of work, we don't use chemicals of any kind. Volunteers can easily see the difference we are making by doing this when they come out to join. And then this volunteer opportunity, Amphibian Crossings, it's entirely weather dependent, and it only takes place on the first warm, rainy nights of spring when the conditions are just right for mass amphibian migration. These are also known as big nights. So we go out to multiple areas that we've identified as amphibian crossings in the county, and we help salamanders and frogs migrate across roads so they can safely get to their breeding grounds. And then another volunteer opportunity are our annual river cleanups. We typically try to hold 3 of these each summer, and we were only able to do one this summer just because of the Housatonic River. The water levels were a little too high, and we did one in June with a group of students from Wacona High School, which you can see there. And then also this year, we began an ongoing ecological restoration project on the riverbank behind our Environmental Leadership and Education Center. We began removing the invasive species from the riverbank and installing straw wattles to help prevent erosion. And then we also started adding some native species. We were able to get a good amount done before renovations started, like late spring, early summer. And that was really only possible thanks to our volunteers. We held multiple days and there were many hours, but there's still a lot to be done. So we'll probably call on volunteers again during spring and summer of next year to help us continue this work. So that's all I have. Thank you all for your attention. I'm going to hand it off to Brittany again, who's going to speak about BEAT's wildlife connectivity work.
So expanding upon what Chelsea shared in terms of BEAT's current and past efforts as it relates to education, outreach, and stewardship, I'm going to do a deeper dive into one specific activity that has won local and even recently international recognition, which is BEAT's work on wildlife passage and connectivity between areas where wildlife live. So this is a map of Pittsfield, which highlights a number of stream crossing points where road infrastructure intersects with these areas that wildlife are inclined to traverse. The red dots indicate areas where road infrastructure presents severe barriers to wildlife passage, and the black dot indicates an area that is completely impassable for wildlife of all sizes and is also was presenting a major hazard even to drivers, for example. On the next slide, you can see before this piece of infrastructure was addressed, it was even causing flooding over the road instead of allowing water to flow through the culvert or bridge that should be underneath. So something BEAT does, and in 2024 will be an initiative that Chelsea in particular is leading, will involve groups of individuals, volunteers, and staff going out and doing surveys of wildlife crossing points. So this involves measuring various metrics about the amount of space that aquatic and terrestrial wildlife have to pass under road infrastructure. Here and in the next photo, you can see volunteers out performing these surveys. You can see, for example, in some of these images that wildlife is unable to pass. A deer would not be able to pass. And here at Churchill Brook, which was, or at Churchill Street, indicated by the black dot on the previous map, there were also the remains of deer who had been likely hit by cars, having not been able to cross under the bridge, but had gone over. So BEAT's surveying and subsequent advocacy to push for improvements to road infrastructure in these areas that were obstructed resulted in what we believe is a real improvement to the infrastructure and allows for wildlife of all sizes, from the little salamanders to deer, and even larger animals like moose could feasibly pass through a larger structure. And here you can see represented what we advocate, which is road space that has 1.2 times bankful width of the stream, so that there's space for both terrestrial and aquatic life to pass. You can go to the next slide. In the middle, you'll see Jane Wynn, who was honored along with the staff of BEAT for work on this issue in particular in the summer of this year. So this was BEAT's first international award and really marks how salient this issue continues to be in our community and beyond. So we look forward in 2024. On the next slide, you can see that this will be an ongoing activity. These are some photos from a few weeks ago, and if you are interested in becoming involved in surveying wildlife passage crossing points, feel free to be in touch, and you too can go out and get your feet wet in January and throughout all of 2024. And I'll pass it off to Rose.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm the program director for No Frat Gas in Mass. That's the program that responds to energy infrastructure proposals, fossil fuel infrastructure. And we started nearly 10 years ago. No Frat Gas in Mass started informing communities of the impacts of newly proposed fossil fuel projects, especially when we were faced with a new proposal by Tennessee Gas Kinder Morgan for the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline and the Connecticut expansion pipelines at the same time. So aside from going from community to community to community to make presentations describing this infrastructure, we also made sure that elected officials were informed. We found out a lot of them had not been contacted by the pipeline company, didn't know what was coming their way. We made sure, of course, that the residents were informed, and we even managed to talk to FERC commissioners. I managed to corner one at a conference in New Orleans in 2017 to bring up the issues, but we just did so again on Friday to talk about clean energy interconnection. So we go from the residents right on up through to the heads of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to bring these up. And previous slide still. We also worked with affected landowners to help them understand the risks and their rights. That even included going and looking at where surveying for the pipeline had happened long before it was permitted. We made sure that that was flagged, and the word got out and it stopped. So next slide, please. Our role on all these projects has been to gather and disseminate information from all the different groups that are working on that and to educate communities. And this process of being sort of a hub of information has helped us spur campaigns region-wide by providing communities and grassroots organizations with technical details on fossil fuel infrastructure and its harmful impacts. We also provided templates for action, which helped provide pathways for opposition to these projects. And we shared strategies and knowledge among many organizations, which facilitated more informed decision-making by all. And this led to hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing, and protest after protest after protest after protest. And we managed to defeat the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline within 2.5 years. At a time when very few projects got canceled, they finally realized the opposition was too thick and they dropped the project. And we've continued this ever since on lots of different energy and environmental justice issues, providing public education and advocating for energy efficiency and clean energy alternatives, as long as they're cited properly. That's another concern. Just because energy is clean does not mean that it's in the right place. So we help inform people on that. We also work on informing the public on opportunities to participate in decision-making process, like hearings and listening sessions. And this has really become more of an issue because in the last 3 legislative sessions, we've had 3 major environmental bills pass. And included in that was a mandate that they need to reach out to environmental justice communities. So we're one of the organizations that the administration reaches out to make sure that we spread the word about hearings, listening sessions, and other proceedings going on. And we actually have a new section on the nofracgasandmass.com website called Comment Periods, where you can look up what's going on and you can plug into those procedural type things. And we also, as always, have our events page where you can plug into protests and other actions, webinars, and so on all of the different energy subjects going on. And the last 4 years, we have been working on our Put Peakers in the Past campaign. We started taking on existing fossil fuel infrastructure. So we went from just opposing newly proposed projects to looking at the ones, the existing fossil fuel infrastructure that really doesn't need to be there anymore. And peaker power plants are the prime example of unnecessary infrastructure at this point. They are the oldest, least efficient, and dirtiest electric generation plants in our electric sector fleet. And they only run when there's absolute peak demand, when the grid is maxed out. So they're more easily replaced by batteries and renewables. Next slide, please. So we started gathering, disseminating information in the community. We got 300 signatures so far on the peaker petition. We got letters of concern from boards of health, and we held standout protests. And that brought the owners of these plants in Berkshire County to the table for discussions. And we got great results with one of them. Cogentrix owns 3 peakers in Massachusetts, 2 of them in Berkshire County. They have now shut down the 2 in Berkshire County. They were 50 and 60 years old, and they ran on kerosene. So the Doreen plant is closed. The Woodland plant is now closed. And they also closed down a huge peaker plant that they had in West Springfield. And they're now working on transitioning that to battery storage and renewables. So this has been really successful. Another victory that we had was the community eco power plant. If you've ever been to Price Chopper, Berkshire Crossing Plaza, you've probably smelled it in years past. It used to just smell bad when it was running, but then a couple of years ago, their roof burnt out and they started to put out a blue toxic cloud of smoke. And we actually worked with a whistleblower who worked at the plant to help flag it with all of the regulatory agencies, DEP and others, and it has now closed. So it ended those awful emissions. Of course, that's where all the trash got burned, so that raised the need to look much tougher at waste reduction, which is something that's being addressed by BizWeed that you'll hear about later on in the presentation. So with that, I'll pass it on to our wonderful program assistant, John Brzezinski.
Okay, thanks for coming, everybody. It's nice to see everybody here. My name is John Brzezinski, as Rose so ably noted. I have been, since last February, a project assistant for No Frack Gas at Mass. So I work directly with Rose most of the time, although I also help out on BEAT's issues from time to time. I handle a lot of technical backend for our websites and also participate and help out in the work we do to get the state to phase out fossil fuel infrastructure, which includes lots of research, which I really enjoy, I have to say. First project I did upon joining BEAT last February was to build a new website for No Frack Gas en Masse, which you can see on the screen here. I maintain the website, keep the latest environmental news up to date, along with event listings and actions, as Rose mentioned, that people can take to help pass environmental legislation and provide a lot of background information on the issues. A lot of that is transitioned from the website that Rose painstakingly built over the years. So there's a ton of information in there, and it goes back quite a ways if you're interested in historical stuff as well. So the most major project that I did, or at least the biggest headache, was BEAT in 20 years has managed to put together a whole lot of stuff online, and it was hard to find stuff after a while because it's just like going to a library that's not doesn't have a card catalog. So the first thing I did, one of the first projects I did, was to build to move all of the BEAT online presence, including thousands of emails and several thousand documents from their somewhat scattered organization, into a Google workspace. So everything now can be in the same place. As I said, over 20 years, a lot of digital footprints had accumulated. And I worked through the process of getting Google to recognize our nonprofit status so we can use Workspace for free, which is, it's not ridiculously expensive, but the money adds up. So it's really a good thing that we are able to not have to pay for that. Next slide, please. And this is our workspace with everything we need to organize our users and their projects. There's just a whole lot in here that helps us get everything done that we need to. And it's much more efficient than trying to just send everybody an email saying, this document is over on this thing and there's something else over here. So that worked out pretty well. Yes, thank you. I also, my predecessor in this position, Jake, did a great job on a weekly newsletter. But I, at Rose's suggestion, transitioned that into a monthly environmental news email, for which I write a leading article about subjects like virtual power plants, environmental justice. COP28 is the current one you can see there. COP28 is the acronym for the 28th UN Conference of Parties, the Global Climate Conference, which is just wrapping up right now, a little disappointingly, but some good stuff happened. If below the leading article, I link to, what I curate as some of the most interesting environmental climate news of the past month. I think there's like usually 6 or 7 topics that I cover there and link to articles about. And I also built a new website for our Massachusetts Clean Peak Coalition, which is a group of environmental organizations across the state, including No Frack Gas en Masse. We are all working together to shut down peaker plants. And it's been a very effective organization so far, I'd say, and the people in it are great and know what they're doing. Also participated in a bunch of legislative hearings, filed comments either verbally or an email. Usually those are remote on Zoom. Previous slide, please. Here we are with our Senator Paul Mark talking about the bills that Mass Power Forward would like passed in the next legislative session. And you can go on to the next slide, Jane. I don't just sit behind a computer all day. Sometimes I get to go out in the field, and here I am with Rose and Chris from Cogentrix getting a tour of the huge, I mean, really huge plant that they shut down to transition to battery and renewables. It was pretty fascinating and also really cold that day. But it was worth the trip because it was pretty good. So that's it for me. Passing it on to Andrew. Or no, to Lucas, sorry.
Thanks, John. All right, I'm Lucas, and I started managing BEAT's air quality monitoring project, Breathe Easy Berkshires, in April of this year. Getting right back into a little bit of background information, in 2021, the Environmental Protection Agency announced their part of the American Rescue Plan, which included $100 million to address health outcome disparities from not only the pandemic, but air pollution in underserved communities. Next slide, please. In 2022, a report called Pittsfield West Side Neighborhood, a case study, redlining in the mill towns of New England, was commissioned by the Greylock Federal Credit Union, and it details Pittsfield's history of redlining and its lasting effect on the residents of the West Side neighborhood. Redlining is the discriminatory practice of arbitrarily denying or limiting financial services to specific neighborhoods, generally because its residents are people of color or are poor. Next slide, please. In this report, it was identified that people who reside in the Red Line center of Pittsfield and the West Side and Morningside neighborhoods live an average of 10 to 12 years less than the residents of Southeast Pittsfield. The report also points out that the national averages for Red Line communities are having roughly 3-year lower life expectancy than their more income-secure counterparts. The 7-year difference between the US averages and our city are really striking. Next slide, please. After learning about the EPA grant and the life expectancy disparity, Jane and Rose applied to start an air quality monitoring and public health project. We will be looking at levels of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, which have been linked to a number of issues, including respiratory symptoms, acute and chronic bronchitis, development and aggravation of asthma, development of cancers, reduced lung growth and function in children, hospitalization admissions, and emergency room visits for cardiopulmonary issues, and even premature death. Next slide, please. Our hypothesis is that Inner Pittsfield is suffering from this kind of pollution through traffic and industrial emissions, which are the main sources of both particulate and nitrogen oxides. Next slide. So Breathe Easy Berkshires consists of 3 main components, one of which is a public health survey. The Berkshire Regional Planning Commission has gotten the same grant as we did, but are focusing on indoor air quality. During 2024, while they're getting their project up and running, we'll be working with them as well as Dr. Nicole Porther from the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts to develop and launch it. And we'll be comparing that data with air quality readings from both our project and BRPC to see what correlation between pollution and life expectancy disparity is. So the other 2 parts of our project that you see here are ambient and targeted air monitoring. In mid-January, we'll be deploying stationary monitors in 9 key locations throughout Pittsfield, including Morningside Community School, Allendale Elementary School, City Hall, and Pittsfield Municipal Airport, as well as Habitat for Humanity. And these sites were chosen for their proximity to both residential areas and pollutants. You'll be able to see real-time readings of air quality from our website, as well as the site of the people that make and maintain the monitors, the Clarity Movement Company. To the right here, you'll see our monitor in Springfield with a reading from Monday. Before being deployed, they have been going through calibration in Springfield to match readings with the regulatory monitor readings from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Their monitors are used to ensure that the national ambient air quality standards are being met, so we trust the calibration to be realistic to what pollution actually is. We're also assembling a mobile squad to to walk routes with handheld sensors. We're looking at routine loops through Morningside, Westside, and the southeast of Pittsfield, as well as any locations reported to us by people who reach out with observations or concerns about emissions in their daily lives. Next slide, please. So please reach out with any questions, feedback, or sites to investigate. Breathe Easy Berkshires is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also email me, lucas@thebeatnews.org. And around the same time that we'll have our stationary monitors up in Pittsfield, you'll be able to visit our website, breatheeasyberkshires.org. And with that, I will pass it on to my good buddy, Andrew.
Thanks, Lucas. Again, I'm Andrew Ferrara, and I get to deal with all things waste and recycling and composting. It's very exciting. So as Rose mentioned earlier, the shutdown of the incineration plant in Pittsfield is a win, not just for pollution and air quality and energy, but also in helping us direct our waste towards better management. So you can see here in this graph, which is from a report published by Mass DEP in 2019, this is the expected landfill capacity in state for the rest of this decade. As you can see, we start off having adequate capacity and then dropping off to almost none at the end of this decade. Currently, we only have 5 operating landfills in the state, none of which are in Berkshire County. 5 operating incinerators, 16 landfills in the state. Again, none of which are in Berkshire County. So much of our waste is shipped out of state, either north into Vermont, west into New York, even overseas. In response to this, Massachusetts, the Mass DEP has been putting out programming and their solid waste master plan, which again looks towards the end of this decade, with goals for waste reduction and prevention, and also better diversion. So you can see here in this pie chart from the waste statewide that was thrown out at the municipal level in 2019. These numbers are a little hard to see, but you can see the second largest chunk is food waste, which of course has no business being in the municipal solid waste stream. That is one of the most easily diverted waste streams that we have, along with compostable paper. Also in here is textiles, which are now banned in the waste stream, can also be recycled easily, and even just recycled paper and corrugated cardboard, which again has no business being in our waste stream. So there's kind of 2 facets of waste prevention that I think are important. One is waste diversion, so better recycling, composting. As you can see here, we call out a couple of our local composting businesses. I know John Pitroff from Second Chance is actually on this call, which is great. And then waste prevention in the first place as well. So working with local groups like Sheffield Saves, the Lee Greener Gateway Committee, and the Egremont Green Committee, all of which have been in discussions with management at Big Y in attempts to get them to reduce waste, especially plastic waste. Also working with community groups like the recycling team at Kimball Farms, who are trying to improve recycling for their own residences, and even municipalities who are kind of strapped to try and pick up the pieces from waste reduction legislation without tons of funding and tons of resources. So I've been working with the town of New Marlborough, trying to help fill in some of these gaps for waste reduction programs and better recycling access in our neighborhoods. And also recently with the town of Dalton, working to enforce some of their waste recycling mandates, which actually already were on the books, but weren't enforced in apartment buildings, and now will be. Next slide. So I am also a recent addition to the BEAT staff. I started in the spring of this past year as a MCLA student intern, and then graduated and joined as a staff. So I'm still very much in the beginnings of my work, and looking towards, after making all of these community connections in the past year, looking towards having a greater impact in businesses and institutions across our county. You can see here a flyer from our Wasteless Restaurant program, which is a partnership with restaurants across the county that commit to taking action to reduce and divert waste in their own businesses, which we then assist them in making those choices, getting connected with resources, and then also advertise to customers that these organizations, these businesses are out there and they are wanting to do the right thing and actually supporting these local businesses. Also getting interested in schools and community organizers, making sure that at every level, not just the individual, we are moving towards zero waste in the Berkshires. Thanks. Go ahead, Jane.
I'm trying. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all. I am so proud of BEAT staff and so grateful to get to work with such an awesome group of people. And I really thank you all. We've come such a long way over the last 20 years, and that's thanks to a fantastic staff, wonderful board of directors, tremendous volunteers, lots of collaborators, partners, coalitions, and a super supportive group of donors. And I thank you all so much. Back in 2019, BEAT finally moved out of Bruce and my house. And then in 2021, we were able to buy this property. Thank you to all our supporters. And then this last year, we've been going through renovations to make the first floor fully accessible. So we've been working with local green architect, Wendy Brown, who did all the design work, and East Branch Studio, which is a design build group that have just been amazing to work with, especially putting up with our saying, you know, everything has to be deconstructed and recycled or reused. And they have done a great job at really doing that. So we had our plans of putting in a sloped walkway, an accessible bathroom with a water refill station, and an accessible balcony. And that part has all been done. The slope walkway needs a little bit more work. We still have a bunch we want to do, but I just want to show you some of the highlights of what's been done. It started out with, in our main meeting room, they put up a plastic partition, so we had everything crammed into the rest of the room for being able to work this summer. In the meantime, they took out the wall that was separating. So we had two offices with one door and one light switch, which drove me crazy. And now we have 3 separate doors, one to each office. And in the middle, we have our accessible bathroom. So this is the bathroom in process. And the finished product. Our meeting room is back to having space. We've even got a reading nook and our nature table that's out with a wonderful stereoscopic microscope that's really great for seeing the feathers and turtle scoots. In the exhibit hall that used to be the chapel, we took out the stage and then the stained glass window. And I really was pretty oblivious as they were trying to explain to me how bad the wall was in being attached to the foundation. I guess basically there was no support for this wall. They were able to reuse beams that they had taken out elsewhere to rebuild the structure below this wall. And now we have an accessible balcony outside, which happens to have a butternut tree on either side of it. Well planned on our part. And now looking out toward the balcony, we have our stream table that is set up, and we've actually had 4 different Berkshire Community College classes come out to use the stream table, and we've got at least 2 high schools and 1 middle school who would like to set things up for next semester. So our exhibit hall is beginning to really be an exhibit hall. And we have a grant application in to add lots more exhibits that will all be focused on the science that BEAT does, and science that will help everyone to be able to address climate change and sources of pollution here in the Berkshires. So I hope you agree that we've been a really effective organization for the last 20 years and plan to be for the next 20 as well. I think we're a very small organization that does a lot. And the reason we can do so much is because we have all of you. And we are so grateful for all the help we get. It takes a much bigger team than just the 7 of us. And you all give me such a distorted view of the world. I have so many wonderful people in my life who agree with our values and protecting the environment. And I realize it may be a little bit of a distorted view, but I really treasure that. So I want to end by thanking everyone who came tonight and all the people who volunteer and support us. And if you need to get in touch with us, you can come visit us at 20 Chapel Street. We're there most days, but feel free to call ahead in case. You can reach us at team@thebeatnews.org, or the office phone number is right down here. And we'd be happy to have you come visit. So with that, I'll stop sharing the screen and see what questions we have.
Feel free to just unmute. You can raise your virtual hand. You can put your questions in the chat and we can read them if you don't want to unmute.
Oh, some of the comments in the chat are wonderful. I couldn't see the chat, but I'm so glad people have plants from our garden that are growing well for them.
Jenny, do you have your hand raised?
I do. Hi. First of all, you guys are so awesome, and I'm so glad that you are here fighting the good fight for all of us lazy folks. So we will try to get more involved for sure. But I had a question. I don't know if it was maybe answered a little bit, but is there like any plan to work on getting municipal composting going in Pittsfield? Because I don't want to start bugging my city councilor if like there's already something going on that I should know about.
So I'm not sure about composting at the city level. I know that Pittsfield is still in the midst of figuring out the transfer station replacement that Casella is taking up. So I'm not sure that the city itself is necessarily there yet. Hopefully in the future we can make that happen. But definitely I would recommend checking out some of the local businesses that we have that we are so lucky to have available to us for composting, like Second Chance and Tommy's Composting.
Yeah, we signed up for Tommy's, and you know we're happy to pay for that. But all right, I guess I'll get on Jim just to see like, hey, how far in the future are we talking? Because it's a huge, nasty part of our waste stream, and there's no reason for it, as you pointed out. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Jenny and Dave, for all your help at Kids and Kayaks.
Lucas, I have a question for you. Are you still looking for people from the public in Pittsfield to do the air quality monitoring for you?
We are towards the end of searching for folks, but anybody who would like to apply is welcome to. We'd love to hear from them.
Okay, and how do they do that?
They can email me at lucas@thebeatnews.org with their resume and why they're interested, a couple of references, and we will schedule a meeting to meet them.
Oh, okay. And is it a paid position or is it volunteer? I can't remember.
It is paid, yes. We're thinking about having volunteering in the future, but we're a little too early in the project to make those kinds of decisions yet.
Sure. And for how long do you think, like 6 months or is it 3 months?
That's a great question. The project goes until March 31st of 2026, and we do have funding for 5 hours a week for 4 individuals until that point.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Jenny had asked about how to sign up for the monthly news. There's the monthly news. You can go to nofratgasinmass.com, and in the column off the side, there's a sign up for that. There's also a sign up for the No Frat Gas and Mass Action newsletters. I publish those at least once a month, more often if there's more stuff going on. And that's more in action on what actions you can take on climate and energy issues. So one's the news digest, the other is action items.
Terry Stifler, did you have?
Yes, I did. I want to say I'm just so grateful, as I think Jenny mentioned, that you guys have been fighting this fight for 20 years and doing amazing work. And I had a question. I heard you talk, Jane, with one of our local announcers on WAMC, I think, like a couple of weeks ago. And I think I heard you mention also that you want to try to get rid of some of the sides, the pesticides, the other. Is that something that's on your radar? Are you
definitely on our radar? Brittany, do you want to speak to that?
I think Brittany is part of, is it the zoning board for Sheffield?
I think the planning board for Sheffield. Anyway, that is one of the issues that Brittany is especially excited about. So yes, we are looking at trying to figure out what exactly our strategy should be. And Terry is one of our newer board members, so I hope you will be happy to help us with figuring that all out.
I would be very happy. Yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about too. No mow May and our pollinators, and yeah, that sounds great.
We're excited. It's easier to focus on the positive part. Taking on the sides is going to be more challenging. Mass Audubon is doing a great job on the rodenticides, and there's a bill at the State House that still isn't passed, but we'd like to broaden that out.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Thank you.
Great question.
Terry, also, and anyone else that's interested in just keeping up to date on that or learning more about it, MAPPN, the Massachusetts Pollinator Network, they host a monthly meeting. I think it's like the last Tuesday of the month, where they're often talking about pesticides and current bills and things like that. So, and also, yeah, the ways other towns are trying to implement strategies to reduce them.
That's great. Thanks, Chelsea. Yeah, we tried to do it in my last town, and it was quite an uphill battle. We didn't get as far as we wanted on it. So the glycosols, all the different nasties that are out there, the Roundups of the world.
It's Russ. I see that you had a question. Did I see something recently about wild acres? Was it in the news for some reason? Or maybe I read something about the replacement of some boardwalk or bog bridge there. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So this is where I have to just apologize for being a little bit out of touch with what's going on in the Berkshires and just hearing things second or third hand. But it was in somebody's newsletter, I think, maybe BNRC's, where they said that they had reconstructed the a section of trail in there that had a collapsing boardwalk or bog bridge. And it just reminded me that the whole reason I know about Wild Acres is about the airport controversy years ago. And so this might be a good time to ask, is that completely put to bed, or is that still simmering in some degree?
The airport project went forward and they expanded, much to our frustration. We lost our appeal. But I'll have to say the new management has been dramatically different than the old management in actually wanting to work with us on air quality, possibly habitat management. So that's good. Wild Acres has been dramatically transformed. And I've been there, but I haven't explored the new trails there or this new bog bridge, which I have to admit, I kind of avoided the whole area because I was so angry over the airport expansion. And now we're part of a group trying to reduce private jet use just from a climate change perspective.
Yeah, their main issue that they're tackling is expansion of the Hanscom airfield for private jets. It would basically, the emissions from the jets that it would allow would undo all the other climate measures that have been done in the state to try to reduce emissions. So they're interested in, first of all, getting the governor to not allow that project, but to also tackle any other airport expansions like the one that happened in Pittsfield. As far as I know, the only other ones being proposed, at least that I've heard of, are Plymouth and out at the Cape. But they're very interested in hearing from anywhere in the state if there's any other airport expansions going on. And we have lawn signs actually to stop private jet expansion for that campaign. We have them at Beat if anybody wants a lawn sign to help promote that campaign that's going on.
It's funny when we were.
Pardon me, didn't I also hear there's an issue about leaded gasoline that's still used at these smaller airports?
Yep.
I don't know, is that with the jets or just the propeller planes?
Go ahead, Rose.
I think it's just the propeller planes. And if so, they're one of the easier ones to electrify. Electric airplanes aren't viable yet, but if any of them get through, those are the ones most likely to go electric. It's not the private jets like the Lear jets.
And the airport manager was interested in talking with us about this sort of thing. I'm not sure Lions Aviation that sells all of the jet or the airplane fuel is going to be as interested in talking with us. And they benefited greatly from the expansion, which I don't think bodes well for the air quality, which is right near Beat. So, but we don't have the ability to monitor for lead for air quality. So it's going to be interesting to look at particulate matter and then try to figure out if there's a way to correlate that with lead. And then move them off leaded gasoline somehow.
And I'm just dropping a link for the Stop Private Jet campaign in the chat. It's on nofratgasinmass.com.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. This is great. It was really fun to get to hear all the staff talk about how much great stuff we're doing. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing about it. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.